Hi, I'm Rajiv, and today I'm going to be talking to you about learning a new skill. Learning a skill for me has often been something that starts casually and sometimes shifts. It shifts focus and it becomes very serious. I think it's very healthy to have an active interest in learning new things. And over the years, I start out usually just by trying something out to see if my curiosity is piqued. In my childhood bedroom, I had a full 4-harness loom for weaving cloth set up. It took up most of the bedroom. I wove one thing on it, and at the end of it, I realized, weaving, not for me. So when I try something out and I'm actually intrigued by the material, by the process, then I start to actually give more time and dedication to learning that new skill. So do you want the same consistency as the red? Is that what you're aiming for, or is it a specific consistency for this pigment?
The same consistency, the same, let's say, thickness, the same amount of pigment. I would say maybe 60 to 70% of pigment. 100% will be the whole thing from the tube.
Okay.
Right? And these are the colors that I picked from here, which was dry. And I just added here. So you see how even though it was dry, it still comes up. So I always fill it up your palette. Never stingy little things.
Okay.
It's always, the more you add, the more it's gonna be better for you. And now it's gonna get like a cobalt. See, very thick. And because I just got a lot, it's easier. And I can just start with the blue. And I think it's good.
That's thick enough?
I think so.
Okay.
This is just a little bit more. So, and break it. See, now I can see there's some paint right here on the
Yeah.
I'm just breaking that. So because this is a small area, then it works. I think it'll be better for you to
Okay.
this way, because this is the secret right here. So then you start, right? And then you add a little bit of yellow there. A little more 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 yellow there. Now this is contaminated, so I'm just gonna stay here. And I'm gonna move to the left. Moving to the left. Moving to the left. Moving to the left. So now I'm gonna get a little bit of red here. Very gentle. Red. Red. More red. More red. And now this is quite contaminated here, so I'm just gonna stick with this one right now, and I will be moving to the left. Keep moving to the left. And to the left. See, it's a little more pure than these ones here.
Wow.
And then once you're done, then you take the puddle over, you lift the puddle, clean your brush, and then there is a gradation here.
I find I can only take myself so far with self-guidance and instruction, and then I really need someone to show me.
There's a little color here, there's a little purple here, there's more calligraphic.
Finding the right teacher is, for me, the hardest part about learning a new skill. You can find a teacher to show you how to run through the motions, but I have found over the years that if I'm not inspired by the teacher's work, then I'm not really motivated to learn or to do the practice.
Yeah, I should have left a little white there, too late.
This right here is a flower pot that I made just a couple years ago in 2022. When I hold this pot, I'm reminded of the very beginning of making flower pots, way back in 2009. I knew that I could take pottery classes after high school. I knew that I could enroll in certain programs, but I was not inspired by any instructor's work that I saw. And then one day, while reading a magazine, I read an article about Guy Wolff, a potter in Connecticut who specialized in flower pots. And I knew after reading that article that this was the person that I need to learn from. So I picked up the phone and I called him. And I asked him if I could come down and just watch him. And he said, no, thank you. So what do? He was the only person that inspired me to learn how to throw pots. So I took out my calligraphy pen and some really nice paper, and I wrote like a 4-page letter in beautiful penmanship, and I put it in an envelope and put some really nice postage stamps on it and put it in the mail. And then I followed that letter up with another phone call 2 weeks later. And at the end of that conversation, he said, fine, you can come. And that was 14 years ago. It was 2009, so that's 15 years ago. And when I went there that first year, I did not expect to throw any pottery. I said, look, I just want to watch you work. I will mop the floors. I will empty the slop buckets. And that's how he initially agreed to let me come and visit. Within the first couple of days, Guy said, okay, you want to throw on the pottery wheel? And I was shocked. Those early flower pots, which I don't have any of those, but Guy has some of them in their archive, those pots are not something that I'm proud of. But 15 years later, I feel like the dedication that I gave to this craft and the instruction from Guy has resulted in pots that I'm actually really proud of. I remember being there that first year, and I would throw, and my pots were so clunky and heavy, and then I would watch Guy throw, and there was this burning desire. I would stand and I would watch him effortlessly, fluidly, beautifully, almost like a dance of his hands, make a pot that was just singing. And I was, in my head, I was just, I want to do that. But I knew that you need to make thousands of them in order to get to a place where it's fluid. I knew that that would take time. I also knew that it would take dedication. So in those early years when I lived in Toronto, I would trek from Toronto to Connecticut once a year to be with Guy and to slowly learn from him. When I'm learning a new skill, especially from someone that I've sought out, there's a huge amount of respect that needs to take place between the student and the teacher. I come from a Hindu background, and once I was in South India learning Carnatic music from a renowned flute player, Mala. And in those early days of taking classes with her, she reminded me of a few things that took me back to my culture. I arrived for the lesson and I sat down, and she very hesitatingly said, oh, you're supposed to give me an asirvadam. An asirvadam is in Hindu culture where you kneel down and you bow at the teacher's feet. And that's what I did. She also told me not to call her Mala, which was her name, but to call her Akka, which means older sister in Tamil. Those two things reminded me of the beauty of learning in Hinduism. I have a wonderful statue of the goddess of learning, Saraswati, here in my apartment. And Saraswati in Sanskrit literally means that which flows. She's often pictured as sitting on a lotus flower or on a swan that's gliding on a river. Knowledge isn't something that stays still. It flows and it passes in a very beautiful way between the teacher and the student. And if the student really understands what's happening, then they're taking, in a very sacred way, what the teacher is giving them. I know that the most valuable gift that someone can give me is not something that I can hold in my hands, but something that I will hold forever in here, long after that person is gone or when we're far apart, I have something now in here that I can do, and it came from that person. That is a sacred gift. Another cornerstone of learning a new skill is practice, dedicating the time to actually sit and do the thing. Am I giving this new skill time? And practice is only effective if you're focused. If you're actually focused on analyzing what's happening and asking yourself, what's wrong with this? Why do I keep making the same mistake? Learning how to practice is also a skill in itself. Just because I'm making 200 pots, it doesn't mean I'm getting better. The hours don't matter if the quality of practice is not correct. Because it's very easy to go, it's good enough. It's nice. It will sell, which they always do. The pots always sell. But it's much harder for me to stop and in my mind look at that pot when it just came off the wheel, when it's still wet before it's fired, and to say, is that right? Does it have the beautiful silhouette that Guy has been dictating to you for decades? And when I say no, what's hard is to walk over to the pot, to pick it up and to squash it and to make it again. Because I know that I could have sold that pot, but it's not right. And that's how I get better, by being critical. You can find the best teacher out there. You can find the teacher that will be so disciplined with you, that will give you the exercises, that will tell you how to practice, that will point out the mistakes. But you are the person that actually has to do the thing. They can only take you so far.
Now, when you go to the 7th, the thumb can be lower, okay?
Okay.
And don't try to keep thumb high.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and that just ruins everything. Your hand, just do what your hand feels good doing.
Okay. Well, it's hard to know what feels good and what is wrong. Yeah. I have taken many, many private classes, but I've also taken many group classes. And one of the things that, at this point in my life, that amuses me about group classes is observing what's happening in the group setting. So sure enough, in almost every single art class, there is always the person that keeps interrupting the teacher while the teacher is talking. Excuse me, Marcelo? What kind of pencil is that? What brand? What hardness? And that amuses me, because that person doesn't think, why don't I wait till they're finished and ask at the very end, why am I interrupting? All these other people are paying for the class. No, they keep interrupting. And just out of my own personal amusement, at the end of the class, like at the end of 4, 5, 6 weeks, I like to look at that person's work, because there's always that person in every class. And often the work looks exactly the same as the beginning of the class. I've learned that there's a huge aspect that the student needs to quell and to work on, and that's ego. Put your ego away when the teacher is telling you something. You may not agree with it. You may think you know better. Maybe you do. But stop and listen to what they're telling you, and then try it out. I'm saying this because this is also something that I have to constantly remind myself of. And it makes a big difference. When you're able to just listen, you learn a lot more. My life today is an accumulation of many skills that I've learned over the years. So much so that my everyday feels like just a routine of painting, making pottery, and practicing music. But this is something that I've worked on for most of my life. If you're inspired to learn a new skill, the advice that I would give you is to find out what the voice inside is saying. Do I really want to learn this thing? Because if the answer is yes, then it's going to require a lot of dedication, practice, patience, and respect. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.